Good morning, everyone. This is the Retail Pro version 8 physical inventory. I should have the screen up with the agenda. Just turned it all on, so apologize for running a little late here. But I've got all the attendees, looks like, that signed up, right? So we should be able to get started here. I do have like 6 or 7 of you in my webinar, so I'm going to leave your side muted. If you need to ask a question, you can drop into the chat, or there's a spot where you can raise your hand to ask a question. All right, I see somebody already found that, right? You don't see the agenda up. Okay, so Christy can't see the agenda. Okay, show my screen. Let's see. No one can see my screen. Oh, here we go. All right, how's that, Christy? Is that everybody should be able to see now? Yes. Okay, on there showing screen, everybody's recording. Okay, so I've got a question. Okay, and then a question here. All right, so everybody should be able to see, we hope. All right, so this is, like I said, version 8, right? If you're brand new to the process, we are going to cover a very, very basic information. If this is a review for you, please bear with me. Because the goal here is just to refresh everybody's memory as to how to take a physical from the top to the bottom. This webinar is going to be recorded and posted out on our YouTube channel. There are multiple versions of version 8 physical inventory on the channel. And please feel free to visit those whenever. You don't have to wait for a webinar. You can access them from anywhere. If you have trouble figuring out how to get to our YouTube channel, it's on the Big Hairy Dog website under, I think, My Videos or something. It should be kind of obvious. If you have trouble finding it, please send us an email and we'll send you a picture, a link, or whatever. Anyone who signed up for this webinar will automatically get a link back to this webinar once we've posted it. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to launch into the actual training here. VA physical inventory, most important, the most important thing that you can do to make your inventory successful is preparing for it ahead of time, right? So we emphasize this over and over and over again because preparation is like 90% of getting this done quickly, efficiently, and accurately. Okay, and to that end, we also publish a guide, which you are, let's see, where to go, guide right here. Which if you have never seen one of these, wait for it. We have it in a PDF form and we have it in a doc form. And there are a variety of methods of capturing the actual count. You can capture it manually. You can have an inventory service come in, count it for you and give you a file. You can rent scanners like what you see here from us to use during your physical inventory. So there's varying methods of collecting the counting, or the count. And this document will deal with everything you need to know from top to bottom. So if you've never seen this, you don't have one, then you can email us, one of either the service department or the tech and training department, and tell us what kind of devices, if any, you use or how you capture your counts, and we can send you the appropriate manual for it. It comes in PDF, also comes in a Word doc. So if you wanted to take it apart and put your own notes in the document, you're more than welcome to do that. All right, so the reason I use this document is because what it emphasizes is preparation, right? So in the week leading up to your physical, you want to make sure if you're multi-store, make sure that if you're doing transfers or vouchers, that those items are indeed vouchered into Retail Pro and had time to poll up to the main, so that whatever is physically in your store, Retail Pro actually knows about it. That document has been processed. Especially important when you do transfers. If you're multi-store, make sure that you cut off your transfers a couple of days ahead of time, or however long it normally takes for that merchandise to get from store A to store B, so that it's been, that if it physically resides in store B, that the paper, the document, transfer, the in-slip has had time to be processed and communicated up to the main. Okay. The main in version 8 is the authority on what is on hand in any location. Okay, because of that, okay, we recommend that if you're multi-store, this note down here, multi-store customers, initialize your inventory to the remote 2 to 3 days prior to the physical. That gives it time to make sure that it gets down there, and that your on hand at the store for that store is the same as the on hand for that store at the main. This is very important because the adjustments for physical are actually created at the main, and they are reconciled or compared against what the main thinks you have on hand for that store. Okay, so it's very important that when you count, okay, that the main on hand for that store and the remote store is in sync. So this is important. If you are not multi-store, you don't have to worry about this. Okay, and whether or not you are multi-store, one thing that we have found that's advisable, not absolutely required, but advisable, is to at some point reconstruct your inventory file. Okay, and make sure you have a good backup. Okay, and this can be done in the week before, just to make sure that everything is as organized as it's going to be from the Retail Pro file standpoint. If you're not sure how to run a reconstruct, we've got some videos here on how to do it. If you have your reconstruct running automatically on your Retail Pro scheduler, that's okay. Just make sure that that it is in fact running, and still verify that you have a backup before the time of the physical arrives. All right, and as far as prep time in the store, right, you want to make sure that everything's got a tag. It seems obvious, but you know, anything that should have a tag needs to have a tag on it. If you have things that you can't tag, i.e. the little tchotchkes that sit on the counter, the chapstick, any of that other stuff that is untaggable, right, make sure that it's organized and that you have a way to know what item number to count it under. You know, either a tag attached to the fixture or, you know, some way so that you can easily go through and know this is item 1, 2, 3, 4. Count them. I have 300 of these. Let's say they're pencils, and I can enter that or count them easily on the day. Some people do pre-count. Okay, if you pre-count like your backstock area or drawers that are on the floor, then you do want to make sure that you secure that inventory so that if the items are disturbed, that it's obvious, right? We tell people if you're counting the backstock area, box it up, put a piece of paper over the top of it, tape it over the top of it with it all sealed with the counts on it, so that if somebody has to get into it, they have to destroy that piece of paper and you know you have to recount it. Okay, so prep, go through your inventory, organize it, go through things like your damage shelf, you know, write those off or adjust them out if that's what you normally would do. Make sure that if you have, if you use layaways, most people still own that layaway merchandise and it needs to be counted in your and you're on hand, right, when you do a physical. All right, so if you have questions about that specifically, then get with the trainer and make sure you know whether or not you need to count your layaway inventory. All right, so the other things that have to do with prep, right? You want to test your scanning method of choice if that's applicable. So if you're renting scanners from us, usually we set up an appointment with a tech the day that the scanners arrive so that we can get them hooked up, test them, make sure everything's ready before the day of inventory. Do not wait to check out your scanning capabilities or scenario until the day of your physical, because it's not, some of the problems you might have may not be solvable on that day, and then you're stuck with all your people standing around without scanners to use. Okay, so if you're using scanners, you want to break those out a few days before, make sure they all still work, make sure the batteries are charged up. If you've changed, swapped out workstations, sometimes the peripheral drivers and things might need to be reinstalled. So just make sure that you schedule time in to check that out. Okay, so question came in here, you're having Regis count this year, and how early before inventory do you suggest sending the file to them? Actually, they will tell you that. So if you've already scheduled with RGIS, they will tell you we need to file, it's usually a couple, 3 days ahead of time. Generally speaking, we count, or we help you build that file if you've never done it before. Regis has standard file formats that they use. We're familiar with them, but we can help you create that validation file is what they call it. Okay, they would just need a couple of days lead time. So if you talk to your Regis rep, they will usually tell you, okay, so we'll send you an email when we want the count. It's probably a good idea if you let us know a little bit ahead of time that you're going to be needing a validation file, so that when the email comes in, we know that to expect it. Okay, but it's not hard. Just need to make sure that you get it on the schedule. And that brings up a point about validation files and SKUs in general, right? Most people clean house after they do a successful physical, right? And that is appropriate. It is probably not a good idea to think, oh, I need to clean house before I do a physical, because sometimes you would run the risk of getting rid of some items that you may physically have, but Retail Pro doesn't know about. Okay, so don't clean house right before a physical. After a physical is the time that you want to do that type of activity. All right, so hopefully that answers Christy's question on Regis files. And so what that means is that on the day of inventory, Regis is going to come in and they're going to want to see everything like completely and totally organized, right? So they can just whip through and count everything. So prep for Regis inventory is even more important. Make sure everything has tags on it. Make sure the stock, if you have back stock, is as organized as humanly possible, because they have to stop and say this thing doesn't have a tag, or if things are tagged and they're not in the validation file, then they have to pull it out. You're going to have to deal with it. So any prep you can do is going to go a long ways towards getting them in and out of there with as accurate a count as possible. All right, and that leads into a next topic about dealing with zones in Retail Pro. Now, this is an option, okay, but it's a good option, right? So we always recommend that you break your location down into zones. Doesn't have to be this fancy, right? All you need is just a sketch of the areas that you want to count, right? And then, so that it's clear to say, for instance, Regis should be able to look at this and say that, go to where that orange section is and count that orange section, okay? Regis does count in zones. They can put the zone right in their counts. For those of you who would be using our scanners, you don't actually define the zone. So what you would do with, if you're dividing things up into zones, you would send a team with a scanner to this orange rack or whatever it is. They would scan everything in the zone, and then you would come and download it into Retail Pro and tell it this is the orange section in the front or whatever. Okay, so what's important about a zone map is that it gives you a way to control and make sure that everything's getting counted, right? So as you go through the zone, right, you send people out to scan this orange zone, they scan it, you dump the zone, and then you mark on the thing, on the zone map, this was counted. You could even put what team counted it, what time they finished, but it's just a way to know everything's checked off, right? We counted everything, right? And break it into recognizable chunks. We recommend that you keep the zones relatively small. It says here in my documentation between 100 and 200 items. About 15 to 20 minutes of scanning, okay, is a good zone size. Two reasons why you want to keep the zone small. Reason number one is it cuts down the fatigue factor, right? So if somebody's standing there for an hour in the same spot, essentially, and working through the zone, fatigue sets in, you make mistakes. If the zone is small and there is something in the zone that was a problem, it's easier to find if you're only looking at between 100 and 200 items. So two reasons for keeping the zones small and manageable. That, like I said, zoning is an option. Some of you may just count the whole store, control it, manually start at one end and work through the rest, and then dump it all into one big file. It's difficult to audit, but some people do it that way. If you're a teeny tiny store and this seems like overkill, I just need to start at one end of the store and count everything. If you think you can control it that way, you have that option. Okay, so you've done as much prep work as you can do. You're ready to think about what else you need to do to make a Retail Pro ready. So besides the reconstruct, here we want to check our workstation preferences to make sure that we have the right kind of settings for the physical that we're going to do next. And if you are, so now we're actually going to get into Retail Pro. Okay, if you are, if you've done physicals before, it's just a question of checking to make sure that the settings haven't changed accidentally, right? We never tell people just to skip this step. It takes 2 seconds to check it. If you're testing download scanners, right, you will have done this before you test the scanners. So if you need to test the scanners, you need to go 2 places: Options, Workstation Preferences. Okay, and over here in the settings, wait for it. Over here in the settings for peripherals, under portable barcode. So this barcode reader type, this is the type of barcode printer that you use for physical inventory, not what you use to scan your items in to a sales receipt or something similar, right? So the Retail Pro PT, this is an old style serial device that we do rent. Some of you may still have those. Most people are using this Palm option now, which is the devices that I showed you here at the top of this document. There's also some more modern versions of this. There are also Apple products now that you can use and put an app on them to record the physical inventory and read it into Retail Pro. There are some choices here. If you're renting scanners from us, it's going to either be this one or this one. Okay, if you're using any of the modern scanners, the apps, anything like that, then it's going to be Palm. Okay, so you check your workstation preference. That's on the workstation that you're planning on using to download the PI into. Okay, and then additionally, you're going to go to the actual PI tool. So Tools, More, RPro PI. All right, and in the PI tool, when this comes up, okay, you're going to check under Options, okay, Workstation Preferences. You want to check here and make sure that you've got the Use Portable Terminal turned on. And by the way, for those of you who are doing Regis, none of this is important, right? Because you're not going to actually using a scanner to capture direct. If you are using Regis, they're going to give you a file in the either the evening of or the next day that contains your counts, and we're just going to import that into the physical inventory. Okay. The other thing that you should check is in the PI system preps right here. So whether or not you're using zones. Okay. And then here you can see the maps for Regis, and these generally are the same from customer to customer. But when we set up your validation file, Christy, or we help you with importing it, we will check this map and make sure that it's all correct for your input. Okay, and that will stay defined on your system. If you use Regis again and again, then you probably won't need to check that. Okay. Okay. All right. So you check this, right? There's a couple of other settings here that we're not going to cover here. They have to do with the type of scanner you use, and if you need to discuss those, we should probably do it individually. But whether or not you're using zones or plain simple inventory is what's important here. All right, so you're as ready as you'll ever be. So now is the time to plan your physical. So you've initialized your inventory at least a day or two before the physical. If you are dealing with a remote location, i.e. your multi-store, so you have a central main, right, and then you have a store. Whether you're doing the the counts for either a main or a remote, okay, you're going to start physical is what they call it. So in the physical tool, if you go to physical here, right, and then stores, okay, and then new, right? So what this does is take what we call a snapshot. Okay, if you are at a remote, you're only going to see your store. This happens to be a main with multiple stores, so it's it's showing all my stores. Generally, people will count in the remote store, so they would on the remote store after when they get ready to start counting, they would do the start physical here, pick the store. Okay, this filter we're going to make sure we're clear. Okay, filters in version 8 can be used to update just certain items and leave others. Today we're just talking about full counts, not partial or cycle counts, right? So make sure your filters are clear. Okay, click OK, and this is going to create a file for every item in the store and show me how many we have on hand as of this moment. Okay, so when we talk about timing on this for version 8, if you're going to count in the morning, okay, then before the store opens, then you need to make sure that you polled last night. Okay, so a lot of people will go to the remote, they will quick poll just to be safe, so that they know that everything got up to the main and that their on hand is synced with the main. Then they do a start physical. Okay, if you are counting after closing, okay, then the same thing applies. So you want to do a quick poll after you close, okay, to make sure that the main is updated with the current on hand from all the documents that happened during the day. Okay, so you want to do that before you start physical. Okay, so once you start physical, now you're ready to count and or download the counts into Retail Pro. All right, and because we're using zones, we're going to download the counts into zones. All right, so if in the PI tool, I go to zones, right, and I start a new zone. Now, some people will go, when they make their map, right, they'll have all their zone numbers, names assigned out on there, and they'll go into the zone list here, and they'll create blank zones for everything. That's up to you. If that's the way you like to do it, if that makes more sense to you, that's great. Okay. I usually try to train people if they don't have, you know, a druthers one way or the other, right, is to go in and add the zone when you're ready to download the scanner or key enter the items, however you're actually capturing your count, right? So let's say we're using the scanners that I showed you here, right? And so we would send a team with the scanner out to that orange zone, which is in the front of the store. When they're done scanning everything, they take the scanner back here, you plug it into a cradle, you click the new button, okay? You tell it what store you're counting, you tell it what zone, and in version 8, the zone has to be 5 characters or less. So, you know, you can, the orange, and something like that. So you also have a place to put notes. So if you want to say, you know, Mary and Kathy counted this, finished, you know, whenever they finished, that's up to you. Okay. Essentially what this will do then is give you the option of either key entering items, okay, which we'll talk about in a second, downloading off the portable terminal, okay. And so if you have a portable terminal configured, once you click on portable terminal, it's going to prompt you to tell the terminal or the scanner, right, to send, right? So if you're using the scanners, you make sure your scanner's plugged in. If it's a PT, it's a curly cable. If it's the JANM or whatever, it's a cradle, right? So you get it plugged in the cradle, then you pick portable terminal, and then you do something on the scanner itself to go ahead and send the stuff over. Now, I don't have one attached here, right? So I'm going to have to try to back out of this because I can't actually show you a download. Okay, so if you download from the scanners, that's why I use this thing right here, because what happens when you download the scanner, entering zones, blah, blah, blah. So here we are, right? So if you're using those scanners, you press a button on the scanner itself, right? And then a window will come up that says it's done. If a window comes up and says some items were not found in inventory and moved to the error view, there are ways of dealing with that, right? So if you are using scanners from us, they don't have your Retail Pro list of items in it, so they'll let you scan random barcodes or things that don't exist in Retail Pro. And when we try to read them into Retail Pro, they'll show up as an error. We'll talk about this just in general. I can't really show it to you, but for any of you who've taken inventory before with scanning scanner items, you know that is a process that you have to go through. If you're using Regis, right, you should not see anything that is not found because you gave Regis a validation file that had your list of Retail Pro items, right? So they would know when they scan it whether it was on the list or not. If it's not on the list, they should be handing it to you so you can figure out what the Retail Pro number is for that thing, and you can either set them aside and deal with them all at once. We'll talk about that when we get into errors. All right, so because I can't show you a portable terminal, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to enter, a few items here. Okay, and for those of you who do not use scanners, you might be familiar with this method of entering your inventory. So you can count everything on sheets and key it all in. Okay. Two things that you need to know about manual entry. If you're keying it in off a sheet, I would recommend you turn on this quantity for current item. Okay. And then you enter the item, you press enter, and it stops and allows you to enter a quantity. If it's just a single quantity, you can just press enter, okay, and then you'll go back up to this line. So this is something that you know, we do show a little bit here. There is a PDF of this actual procedure if you're actually doing manual entry. Okay, most people, you know, endeavor to scan things, or they have Regis count or whatever, right? So when you're in this window, these counts are not saved until you close this, right? So you close this, and as soon as you close that, now you can see your counts listed in your zone. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to go around and around and send that. If you're using the scanner, you want to delete everything out of the scanner. So make sure you know how to do that because you want to clear everything out, send them out to the next zone, the blue zone. Scan everything in the blue zone. All right. Then when they're done, you come back to this computer. You say new, store. Okay. This is the zone blue. Okay. Right. And then portable terminal would download the scanner. I'm going to manual entry these things. I'm going to do quantity for, okay, and then 101, 102. Okay, so you get your counts in, right? Close the file so you make sure you can see this. I'm going to talk just for a second about errors. Okay, and so in my PDF, okay, shows you what it looks like. So if you are using scanners and you get a scanning error, what that means is that the whatever barcode you chose to scan is not recognized by Retail Pro. Okay, so the zone list will look like this. It'll have a red dot next to it, so you'll know which things have errors. You can't actually finish your physical, okay, without resolving these errors or dealing with them in some way. Right. So if you get errors, you just click the OK button. It's got the red dot next to it. Okay. What you can do, okay, is there is a, let's see, there's a printout that you can print that shows here's what was counted that was recognized, here's what was counted that was not recognized. I can't show you a not recognized one, but I can show you what the report looks like, right? And if you don't have the doc designs that say VHD zone report on it, let us know. We can give you these to you. These are V8 designs. You may have your own designs. Oh, hang on a second. Question. So the question came in here, can you, if you're doing your count manually, can you use the scanner at POS? And the answer is yes. So if you are, if you have the ability, right, to use a POS computer, right, then here, right, in manual entry, you can just scan the barcoded items, right? So what I would do if you're counting like the stuff on the counter, right, change to quantity for current item, scan the barcode, okay, and then tell me how many you got. I have 5 of these. Okay, so this is keying or scanning here if you have a directly connected USB scanner. Okay. Okay. So printing, right? So if you're printing this, okay, and you have errors, here we go, preview. All right, so hopefully you can see this. If we had errors, there would be a section up at the top here that says these things were errors, and it's really obvious because they have no description. All they have is the import ID and the quantity. All right, so this allows you to know what was not found in this, in this zone, right? And you can go back and try to figure out what stuff it was. Okay, so with the errors, your job is this is what the error display looks like in actual in the PI tool. Okay, and so what you'll see is this line that has import ID 123 at the top, right? That's a good item. Okay, it was right next to this item that was 9989979. So we scanned a barcode. It's not a Retail Pro barcode, and it was right next to 123. Okay, and right next to 271. So it was actually in between those two. So you could go out to the floor and find this vase, okay, and look at the things that were next to it, so you could tell, what barcode you actually scanned. If you know, if you just scanned the wrong barcode and there was a real Retail Pro number on it, okay, then what you do is back in Retail Pro here, and I can't show you this, but okay. So in here, right, if I had an import ID here that was one that I needed to fix, you could edit it and put the actual Retail Pro item number in here, and that would fix the error. Okay. If you can't identify it, then you can delete this, but you have to deal with it one way or the other. Okay, because you can't have the red dot. Okay, you can't have anything in bad scans in order to finish your inventory. You have to identify them. All right, so this little section in here talks about how to deal with errors. Either find the correct item number and enter it on the display, the error display. You can delete the error if you have a onesie and it's in a bunch of low value stuff and you just want to delete it. That's up to you. Okay. Some people will take anything that shows up as an error. They'll go find it. They'll go pull it out of that zone and put it on a trouble pile and deal with all of them at the end. It just kind of depends on what you have the time for. Okay. In any case, right, once you know what the thing is, okay, then you need to get that scanner back out into circulation, right? So once you've got it downloaded here and you've printed a zone report, right, or gone out to the zone and pulled the item, then you need to delete the scans out of that scanner and get that scanner working again. Okay, whether you choose to deal with fix your errors here in the zone or put them all in trouble pile or anything like that is up to you, and that's just something that you work out with whatever time you have to deal with those things. Right, so you're going to scan the whole store, okay, and if you have errors, you're going to fix the errors. Okay, so the next process is to tell the system that you're done with either zone by zone, which is a possibility, or you can wait till the end and do what we call merge the zones all at the same time. Okay, so to merge a zone, you just need to highlight it. You can't merge it if there's a red dot. If it's available to merge, you can merge it one at a time by highlighting it and clicking this merge zone. Okay, it asks you who you are. Okay, and then you get a blue dot. Blue dot's good. That means I'm done with this zone. Now, if you accidentally merge a zone that you shouldn't have, you can unmerge it. Okay, you have to go to a different spot to unmerge it, but that is possible. So this is not, undoable. Okay, but you do have to merge everything before you can, finalize your physical in any way, shape, or form. So some people, if everything's scanned, right, and they are happy, and they don't have any reason to go double check this or whatever, they'll go ahead and merge it as they go. One advantage to merging as you go is you can't add counts to that accidentally, right? So if you have a lot of little zones, this is an advantage to merging as you go, okay? But if you don't want to, or you get halfway through your inventory and things are going so fast and furious that you don't have a chance to merge as you go, okay, then this, when you're completely done, this mark store, okay, will green checkbox any zones that still have not been merged that don't have red dots. Can't do anything about the red dots. You have to clear those errors, either delete them or edit them with a real Retail Pro number before you can finish everything. All right, so once you have, if you've marked everything with a green dot, then merge marked here will change those green arrows into blue dots. All right, so we're going to merge marked. Okay, so everything I've counted now is compared up against the start physical. All right, so I can now go look at hang on a second. Okay, just checking my questions. Somebody put a question up here. Can you be entering the missing inventory on another workstation? The answer is yes. So you can be in physical inventory in more than one workstation at a time. Okay, you want to be careful and not try to work on the same zone at the same time. That's the only caveat. If you're using simple PI, then we wouldn't recommend that you would be working on the PI in more than one workstation. But as long as you're using zones and you're not working on the same zone on two different workstations at once, then you're okay to use two different workstations in the PI tool. Okay, let's see. Okay, that's all my questions. All right, so once you've merged all the zones, okay, you can go in back to the stores and look at your differences, discrepancies, right? So this is going to be a huge list now because I only counted a handful of things, okay? But if you've completed and merged all your counts, this should be much smaller than what you see here, okay? This is showing you only those things that are different. Okay, so store start. This is the what Retail Pro thought you had on hand when you clicked, you know, new physical, new store. It's called the store start. It's some people call it a freeze. This is the quantity that Retail Pro thought you had on hand. Okay, we counted this column, right? So I entered counts here for these things, okay? The store difference, okay, is the difference between what Retail Pro had and what you counted, right? So if you do nothing, okay, this is the amount, okay, that will be adjusted. Okay, hang on, I got a question coming in here. This is the difference between a check and a blue dot. Okay, let me back up. I'm going to go back to my zones. Okay, so a blue dot means that that thing's been merged, so you can't add anything else to it. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to unmark these and go through that again, just real quick. Unmark, store, let's see, mark, store, can't do it here. Let's see. Let's look at stores, merge zone list. There we go. Okay, so we're going to unmerge these. Okay. Merge zone list, unmerge. Okay, so what I did was unmerged the zones that I had merged, right? So here we're back to the list before I did any merging or anything like that. So the difference between a blue dot and a green check, okay, is that a checkbox, or the green check designates that this thing is ready to merge, right? So you can't get a green check on it if it's a red dot. And so you set the green check if you're going to merge multiple zones at one time. Okay, and then you hit the merge marked button, which turns any zone with a green check into a blue dot. Okay, so hopefully that that little review got you caught up there. Okay. All right, so after we've merged, we can go to the stores and look at our discrepancies. Okay, so store start is what Retail Pro thought you had when you froze the physical. Store physical is all the counts merged into one column. Store difference is what the system is going to add or subtract when we do the update. Okay, this quantity column, this is your current on hand. And so for this, because we've got nothing going on, right, that's going to be the same as store difference. Usually we would recommend that to ease confusion that you would hide that. Okay, so what you care about during a physical is what did Retail Pro think I had at the start? What did I count? Okay, the difference between the two is what's going to be adjusted automatically when you update. Okay. Okay, let's see if I got another question. All right, so Christy's asking, we have to do manual counts ourselves for some things. Can we begin to enter those the day before and still shut down the computers with no problem? So if you're doing manual counts, Christy, you can't enter them into Retail Pro until you do the start physical. Okay, so if I understand your question, you are having Regis count most of the stuff and you're going to do manual counts yourself on the rest of it. Okay, so you should make those manual counts on a sheet, right, and have those ready to enter when you start physical, okay, the day of. So if Regis is coming in and counting at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday, you're going to, after close of business, at 6 o'clock, you're going to quick poll, okay, then you're going to do the start physical, okay, and once you do that, then you can enter the manual counts, but you can't enter them up to the point where you create the physical. Okay, hopefully that answered your question. Let's see if I've got anything else. Okay, doesn't look like it. Okay, when you get to the discrepancy part, right, what you can do is look at these and there's a filter, right? So if you've got pages and pages and pages, right, you can use the filter, okay, and look at, you can check this exclude 0 items, right? That's one thing that you can do. You can look at things, let's see, what am I looking for? I'm looking for single items. You can look at a vendor at a time. So if there's a way that you can cut down on what you're looking at, go ahead and use the filter to do that. Okay, this isn't going to do much because most of my stuff is in here. Okay, and what you're looking at is like this, something like this, right? System thought I had 20. I didn't count any. So if I don't do anything, it's going to remove those 20. What's up with this, right? Is that something that got missed? Is it in a box under my desk? Did I voucher it in and then not put it in the place where it needed to be counted? Okay, so looking at discrepancies is something where people fall into one of 3 categories. One is that I know I counted everything. It is what it is. I'll take a look real quick to see if anything jumps out at me. But in general, I'm pretty confident that I counted everything. Okay. The other end of the spectrum is you fuss over every little discrepancy, and that can take a while, right? So what you need to look at is, am I looking at high value things, right? So, if you're missing expensive pieces of jewelry, yeah, maybe you want to follow up on that. If you're missing refrigerator magnets, and there's like, a handful of them over, a stock of hundreds, right? You're not going to chase that down. Okay, so, and then there's somewhere in the middle, right, where it's like you look at the big stuff, you try to identify what might have happened with the big stuff, but on the day of the physical, the most important thing is that you make sure that you counted everything in the store, okay, and get it into Retail Pro, right? Because you're not going to be able to analyze every little discrepancy, but if you forgot to count something, right, that's the the biggest thing, the place where you can have the most impact to fix. All right, so if you find like these, this number 1103 here is like, oh crap, that was under my desk, right? I forgot to count it, right? So you go get that box of stuff, right? I would also always recommend that you go back in to zones, create a new zone, okay, and call it errors or recount or whatever you want to do, just to show that this wasn't, just do this, that this was not counted in the initial thing, right, for whatever reason, okay, and then this was 1103, right, and we did in fact find the 20 of them, right, so I could have changed this quantity for current item and entered it that way. I can also do this, right? I can say, put one in the file, go to scanned. On an open zone or one that I have not merged, I can actually edit the quantity. Okay, so I can click the edit button here, edit the quantity, save it. Right, so if you had an existing zone where people just space the counts and you want to go edit the counts, you can unmerge that zone and go edit the counts. Just make sure that that you got it right the second time around, because there is no audit trail for changing these counts, right? So the system's not going to know that there was one here and I changed it to 20. Okay, so you can come back in here, create another zone. Okay, you can also in your error zone, if you overcounted something, like you meant to count 1 and you counted 11 of them, same thing applies for the scan quantity, right? You can come in here and you can say, minus some. Okay, so if you overcounted something, I would highly recommend that you do a separate zone with the errors in it, so that if you need to go back and recollect what you actually did, right, that you have that separated out in an error zone. Okay, so you go make whatever changes you're going to make. Okay, now if you're doing this at a remote store, okay, we usually tell people make sure that you've done your best to count everything before you leave the store, right? But if you identify things that you need to fix, you actually will have a chance to fix them at the main before you actually update this count, just so you're aware. A lot of people will go count everything in the store, they'll grab their discrepancy list, they'll take it home, work on it, and then maybe have the store recount a couple things in the morning. By that time, the counts are up at the main, right? And so they can make whatever changes that they want to make on the main before they actually update the physical. All right, so in any case, we got to merge this. So we can merge the zone here. Okay. And so now if I go back to my discrepancy report in stores, So I need to apply my same filter here. If I can find my item. Oh, it dropped off my discrepancy list, right? Because I put in 20, and I had 20, so now it's no longer here, and I'm looking for it. All right, so you get all your. Hang on a second. New question. Manual counts. Can you download a remote? Okay, so there's a question here about downloading Janum scanners at a remote store. And you can absolutely download the Janum scanners at the remote store. In fact, we usually recommend that you do that. To do that, you want to make sure that you have a that you get the Janum hooked up and tested at the store in a few days before you actually do the count and have to rely on it. So that everything goes smoothly in the store. We do have people that scan their whole store into a Janum and then cart them back to the main and dump them, but things can happen, right, in transport. So it's a lot riskier to do that, and we would definitely prefer that you dump the scanners in the remote, okay, and have the system send that back to Retail Pro. Okay, alrighty then. Okay, so we have all our counts in. We've looked at our discrepancies. Maybe we've done a little changing. Okay, if you're at a remote, okay, then the next thing that happens, okay, is where am I? Stores. The next thing that happens is an update or prepare, right? So you can see this button right here where it says update. If you're on a remote, okay, that will say prepare PI. Okay, you don't have to do anything extra or anything. What a prepare PI does is take all these counts that you just created, okay, pack them up so that they can pull up to the main. So most people will prepare PI, okay, and then do a quick pull, and then you're done for the day, because that seals it up, sends it up to the main, okay, and then at the main you're actually going to do the update. Okay, so the polling process will take a prepared PI, take it up to the main, and automatically process it in. So by the time you do a quick poll, if you were to go to the main, okay, you would see this physical sitting here, right? It would look just like this. Okay, if you have multiple stores, you have one line per store. Okay, and then at the main, you still could look at the discrepancies. You still could add zones to the store. You can change the count and all of that stuff. Okay, when you're totally finished and you're ready to make it real, okay, you're going to update. Okay, now I did kind of skip over reporting, okay, all of this, so I want to talk about that really quick. Some people, right, I'm going to go back to my, here, some people, right, run an on-hand report, either, item level on-hand report, a department summary, vendor summary, whatever you like to see, before they update the physical, and they update the physical, and then right after, because that's what their accountants want to see, to know what changed at whatever detail you're used to. So if this is something you're used to doing, run your favorite on-hand report right before you do the update. So this doesn't have anything to do with the prepare at a remote. This is for people who are mains, right, or processing for a remote store at the main. Okay, you run an on-hand report, you do the update, you run the same on-hand report. Okay, and that's optional. You want to do that only if somebody in your organization requires it. Okay. The other thing that is available is what we call a discrepancy report, right? So if you click the print button here, let's see, store, these aren't discrepancies. Let's go into discrepancy. Sorry about that. Okay, it's from the discrepancy view. then it's going to know print. Right, so here's the discrepancy reports. And all of these that you see with BHD or an exclamation at the front, these are ones that we've created. You might have your own, right? If you don't have your own, give us a buzz and we can give you these, right? There are some that come with Retail Pro. They're not very helpful or very pretty. But these come organized by vendor, organized by department, organized by item, department by item, description one. So you can see there's a lot of variety here in the way we organize them, but the data is all the same, right? So let me just pick one here, show you what it looks like. Okay, what is this? This is designed to do is to show you or give you something to take away that you can look at your discrepancies and you're not stuck staring at your Retail Pro computer. Okay, but what this is going to show you is, depending on the organization, each item, what you started with, what you counted, and what the differences are at units and cost, just so you can evaluate what's important to look at and what's not. Okay, there's this one I believe is summarized. Okay, so the last page has an overall summary, just so you can tell. You can, this I didn't count very much, so it looks horrible, but shows how much you were short and how much you were over, and then the net. Okay, and this also has totals by department, so you can go look through at your department totals. This people has, there we go. Okay, this one has a department total. All right, so this is one form. There's a vendor summary. There's several different ways of looking at this report, right? So, and so you can print this. You can yank it into Excel if you have Excel on the computer that you're running it on, and this gives you a way to take this away from Retail Pro and look at your differences offsite. Okay. All right. Anyway, discrepancy reports. The other thing that some people do is they might take their discrepancy display here and export this whole thing right into Excel. You could do that as well. Some people will take their inventory list. So this is everything, regardless of whether we counted it or not. Okay, so here, this is where the exclude 0 items comes in. Okay, so if you exclude 0 items here, then if you don't have it in Retail Pro and you didn't count it, it's not on this list. But this shows everything, even the stuff like this one, where the start and the physical matched. Okay, so those are things that you can do. You can, if you don't know how to export into Excel, get in touch with one of us here so we can run you through that. Anything that is a list view, you can export into Excel. All right, so we have a physical here. Let's pretend we had prepared PI at the store. We quick pulled, that came up to the main. It processed in, so now it's sitting here waiting for us to finish it at the main. We still have full edit capabilities. We could still add zones. We could still change the counts in the zone. The only thing you can't change here, okay, is the start quantity. Okay, so that start quantity is critical. That's why we make sure that everybody knows you should initialize your inventory on hand out to a remote store before you count, because if that's not right, then everything is based on inaccurate start count. All right, so we have this ready to update, right? Updating is the last step. Updating does take a little bit of time. Okay, I am not actually going to update this because I don't want to erase all my inventory here. Not that that's a catastrophe, because just so you know, if you accidentally update and you weren't ready, okay, that count and that update goes into an archive file, and you can undo it, unarchive. If you find yourself faced with a catastrophe where you've accidentally updated and you didn't mean to, or you did something wrong and everything's horrible, just make sure you talk to a tech here real quick before you go trying to redo anything or unarchive yourself. You know, we have people who screw the physical up all the time, right? And so we know the best way to get you back, save your counts, whatever needs to happen, right? So if you find yourself in that unfortunate position, please just give one of the techs a call and have them review with you what the best way to recover your mistake is. All right, when you go to update, okay, it's going to ask you to tell me what location. If this is at the main and your multiple locations, you can update more than one location at a time. Okay, you're going to hit the next button. Okay, this is very important, right? Update on hand here. Make sure all items is checked. If you do not check all items, what that means is that if you have something, let's say you had oversold something and the start physical had -1, and you don't actually own that thing, right? So you didn't count it, okay? If you left this, only items with a physical count, and people do this all the time, okay? If you left that checked, that means that unless you actually physically counted something, right, that item's not going to be updated. When you take a full physical, you want all items to be updated regardless of whether or not you counted them. Because if you have negative on hand, right, or you have something in the system that's in the wrong item and it's mistagged or whatever, you want to update the with whatever tag was on the merchandise, right? So this is very important. Make sure you check all items here. Okay, usually people have a physical inventory reason, right? Here, right, if you counted during this month, right, you can date this any time. Most people, when they do a full physical, they need it done as of the end of the month. They'll do it a few days ahead of time if they have that luxury. If you're doing it after the fact, right, you can say, I want my memo date to be April 30th, right? If that's when you really did your count, okay, you don't have to date the memo today just because you're updating it a month later. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry. I am backdated completely here. So hang on a sec here. Backdated April 30th. Okay. Yeah, all right. So it's not going to let me do this. My licensing is a little messed up here. That probably will not let me do that either. All right, so May. That'll let me do it. Okay, so when you get to this screen, right, this looks like the last screen. It's not. Okay, when you click finish, there's one more thing, one more question you have to answer, and it's very important. When we were at the beginning of the webinar, we talked about filters. If you set a filter in the beginning, it only made a snapshot for those items that you filtered to. Okay, this gives you another opportunity to limit what you're updating. Okay, when you're taking a full physical, you want to make sure this is all clear, right? You don't want to limit what you're updating. Okay, you want to update everything that you had a start physical for, whether you counted it or not just one DCS, vendor code, or anything else. Now I'm going to cancel this because if I click OK, it's going to go ahead and make adjustments for all those things where there were differences in the file. Okay, so to be clear, right, when you do the update, okay, it is not changing your current on hand to whatever you counted. What it's doing, okay, is looking at your discrepancy file, okay, and saying, okay, I have a -5 difference, so it's going to make an adjustment, take 5 out of this item. So I don't care what's happened after you did the start physical, right? You could receive more stuff after the start physical. You could sell stuff after the start physical. The system does not care. Okay, so when you do a physical count, right, you are not under the gun to get that updated before you can open your store for sales, before you can continue regular processing, because the whole point here of doing the freeze is comparing the counts to inventory in a point of time, okay, and retaining that information until you're ready to do the update. When you do the update, it's going to create one big adjustment or maybe several big adjustments, and do whatever's in this column, right? So in this case, right, it's going to add 6 of SKU 101. In this case, it's going to add 1 of 102. In this case, it's going to subtract 5 from 115. All right, so it's going to make these plus or minus adjustments in one big document, okay, and whatever this adjustment is, it will reduce or increase your current on hand at the main for each of these items. All right, so that's the way the physical works. Right, you can wait 2 days, you can wait a week, you can wait until next month. But generally, the farther out you get from the inventory, the harder it would be to try to reconcile differences or anything like that once stuff starts moving around. So it's not a screaming emergency or a showstopper business-wise to wait a day or two to make sure that you've dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's, because this is what's important, and this is what's going to be updated. All right, so you update. That takes a few minutes, right? You're doing that at the main. So if you're doing that at a main and it was an inventory for a remote, those changes will pull down to the store at the next polling. Okay, so the changes, adjustments are not actually made at the store, they're made at the main, and then the main will update the store. All right, so I see another question. Okay, so question here is, how can I check a remote store to see if the JANM hot sync will work? You definitely have to have the JANM device down there. We can check to see if hot sync is installed, but we can't check to see if it will work with your device unless you got the device down there. So in general, if you've used the hot sync in that store before, chances are it's okay. If you swapped out computers, like in version 8, you have 32-bit computers and 64-bit computers. The drivers are different. So I would, recommend that you get the JANM down to that store so we can check it out if at all possible. Okay. All right, so report-wise, we talked about if you run a before and after, right? As soon as you finish the update, you run an after report at the main. Okay, hopefully that's the same place that you did the original one, right? If you're going to do your Excel exports, you can do those. You can actually do your Excel exports out of the archive file, so you don't have to be very worried about getting all of your exports done out of the physical before, because this archive file will always exist. Can't remember if I have anything in my archive. Oh, I got plenty of things in my archive file. All right, so if I look at this, right, each one of these lines was a physical that took place on the date in question here. And I can always go back to this, look at the discrepancy list, right? So here's the discrepancy list for that count. This looked like these people did cycle counts. It's not a very big discrepancy, but you can always go back to this and get this information out of Retail Pro if you need to, right? And just so you're aware, case in point about store difference versus store on hand. So let me reveal the on hand here. Store, that may already be here. Hide show. There we go. So this is the actual on-hand quantity right now as of this moment, and you can see it's different than the store start, okay, because this is an old physical. This physical was done in 2015, right? So that's current on hand, and it may or may not be relevant to the display that you're looking at here. That's why I like to hide it, because this is what I want you focusing on, right? When I took this physical, that's what Retail Pro said I had. This is what I counted. This was the adjustment that was made. Okay, got another question? Okay. All right, so the question is, what's the benefit of doing a PI and leaving it open for a few days over doing adjustment memos by zone to correct inventory? Okay, and so what some people do, right, is they will count an area, and if there's, if they own every, take it for instance, right, if you're doing a zone, and let's say it's your jewelry counter, okay, and you don't have any of those jewelry items anywhere else in the store or in your back stock, right? You need to make sure that if you have, 6 pair of these earrings, and Retail Pro thinks you have 6 pair of those earrings, that you count all 6, okay, so that you're comparing to your total on hand and not just what's in that zone. What some people do is they will get a list of their on hand, and they'll go count. And if there's a difference between what they have on hand and what they count, then they'll create their own adjustment. Okay, and if you're a single store, that's a feasible way to do it. If you're a multi-store, it's not. Okay, but we do have people doing it that way. You're technically not using the Retail Pro PI tool, right, to do that. You're just looking at your on-hand in Retail Pro and going out and verifying that that's what's sitting there. Okay, you make the adjustments as you discover that there are changes. In a small store, if that's manageable, then and your counting people don't care that you do an annual physical and count everything in the store all at one time. You can get away with doing that. So this month is jewelry month, next month is shoe month, next month is women's wear month, etc. Right? So it's doable that way, and for a small store, it could be feasible. Okay. All right. Any other questions that we had that I didn't get answered? If there are, and you think of something later, right, you can review this video. Like I said, it'll be recorded, and you'll get an email link. Or if there's just, if you want a copy of my document here, we just need to know how you take your count. Do you use a scanner, your manual count? However, we can shoot you this PDF. Or if you have questions that you don't think either one of those would answer, you can try emailing us if it's something we can answer quickly. We will do it with email free of charge, or if you want to spend a little bit of time with a trainer, let us know that as well, because we do PI training all the time. And if you only do it once or twice a year, or if the last time you did it, you weren't happy with the results, maybe we can get you a little more information, help you with a little more planning, or suggest some methods that will get you better results. All right, so if there's no more questions, right, I will, let's see, I'm looking to see what else have I got. Can somebody send me the PDF? So Todd is asking for the PDF. So Todd, how do you count physical? Do you rent scanners from us? Do you have your own scanners? Using manual? Do you have your own palm? Okay. So Todd. So this document that I've got up right here is what you need, right? Okay, I'll look through your email and get that emailed to you. All right. Let's see. Okay, can I do inventories on a certain category? Okay, so Richard asked a question about cycle counts, and yes, you can use the Janims for cycle counting. Okay, and the only difference between what I showed you today and cycle counting is that you're going to use this filter up front. Oh, I'm in archive, sorry. I need to get into regular physical. So in the PI tool, when you go to start the physical, I'm going to delete this one, the one we've been playing with. Okay, when you go to start the physical, you pick your store, and then you get this, right? So if you're going to count everything for a DCS or everything for a vendor or something like that, then you tell the system up front, only build stuff for that file. I'm just going to pick a couple of these. I'm not sure how much stuff is in these, but you tell the system, I'm only going to count X stuff, right? Whether it's a description or whatever. So it only will put the stuff in the file that belongs to those items. This is a lot of items here. And I'm seeing a lot of items that aren't it doesn't look like they're in anything. Okay, let's see. Let's look at this. Discrepancy. Haven't counted anything. Okay. Not exactly sure what that is, Jess. All right, so let's do new. Might have picked a store. That's kind of wonky here. So DCS, pick one department. Okay. 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 Inventory. Yeah, I think I've got something a little cockeyed with my file here because as we recommend, reconstruct is an important thing to do. Of course, I did not do that before I started this webinar, but you should be able to scan everything for a department slash vendor or whatever in cycle counts. You should be able to start the cycle count. You also, when you go to update, have another place. Oh, so that got messed up. Okay, at the end, right, you should be able to say only update stuff that belongs to this DCS. Okay, so if you're interested in cycle counts, spend a couple minutes with the trainer and walk through it on your system to make sure that you've got the settings right and you understand how the files work. But it is definitely a thing that you can do, Janum's manual count or whatever. Okay, can we have the Word document? Okay, so Whitney, what kind of scanner? You know, the kind that I showed or a different kind? Janum. Okay, so that's this scanner that I'm showing here. So Whitney. Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right. All right, so I don't see any further questions. I'll go ahead and then stop the recording, get this out posted. For those of you, Todd and Whitney, who've requested the JANM scanner, I'll send you both the doc and the PDF, and you can do with it what you will. Okay. All right, I think that's it. Thanks for your attention, right? You know where to find us, tech@bighairydog.com or service@bighairydog.com if you want to schedule time, or if you don't get your emails that have your documentation or whatever, that's the place to start. And with that, thanks for your attention. We're going to stop and let everybody get back to work. Thank you.